Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, going to do a little vlog post just talking about the Heart of the Swarm changes that have just come out. They've like literally just gone crazy on the internet, so we're going to have a quick look at that and just sort of initial reactions of what I think about them. Obviously, I'm not like, you know, I'm not the Day 9 / Artosis baby combined to some great analyst of the game, but just sort of my initial reactions and what I've thought from some of the things I've seen in Heart of the Swarm, and from, like, because I've been watching a lot of replays lately, and of course these changes will actually provide quite a lot of, well, definitely for Terran, as we'll see, it's going to be pretty interesting. Now, I haven't actually fully read through these, so I just sort of skimmed over them as soon as the link came out. Then I said, alright, some of these are pretty cool, some of these are just, I don't know what's going on. So what we'll do is I'm going to properly read through them. I might read over them a couple of times just to make sure my reading comprehension is on properly, because it is 11 a.m. and I'm still not actually properly awake, mainly because I didn't actually finish my coffee. So let's have a quick look. Of course, if you want to have a look, well, you should be able to find the patch notes yourself. If you can't, then you've got other issues to deal with. So what we'll do on this scene. Okay, so this patch is actually going onto the servers like right now as I'm recording this, so they are going to be active very soon. The servers are down right now, I believe. I haven't actually double checked, but yeah, so these will be coming on very, very soon. Of course, you may have heard that tweeting bird thingy. There it is. Oh, it was just a tweet. Okay, so let's have a look. We've firstly got the Medevac changes, which is actually really cool, I think. I don't want to sort of talk about whether they're ridiculously overpowered or ridiculously bad or something like that, but I do think it's very cool. The Medevac getting the new ability, Emergency Thrusters. Speed boost increases movement, speed, and acceleration for 4.25 for 8 seconds. 20-second cooldown. So basically, Medevac going to get a stim, when you sort of think about it in context, just boosting their speed for a little bit. Now, I've seen a few players, like a couple of players, especially the Terran players who like to are very heavy with their harassment, have said that, especially in TVP, things can get a little bit interesting because of the mothership's photon overcharge. The mothership calls photon overcharge on a Nexus. The normal kind of drops that Terrans will do with Medevacs and like Marauders and Marines dropping down behind a mineral line to do some damage, blah blah blah. That has become a little bit of a more difficult thing to do without proper upgrades. You know, and I'm talking like 2-2 sometimes, just because the with the photon overcharge, the Nexus does 20 damage per shot, and I think it shoots at 1 shot per second or something like that. It's like, it makes it a little bit difficult to do Medevac drops that are actually effective. So this is obviously a way to help with that, because if you know, chuck on your emergency thrusters, run in, drop down your units pretty quickly, you might be able to snipe out a couple of probes and then pick them back up and then zoom back out. Or you could do it the other way around. You could just slowly come in. If the Protoss doesn't react, you can just leave the emergency thrusters for a bit, and then once he does react, pick up, bam, emergency thrusters, and zoom out of there. So I think that'll be nice for that. I kind of, while obviously it's going to affect me as a Protoss player, or partly as a Protoss player and a Terran Mech player, so I don't actually use Medevacs when I play Terran, it will be very interesting to see how that goes. The next one is an upgrade to the Caduceus reactor. We've got the Caduceus reactor upgrade at the Starport Tech Lab, still all the same. Now, it does change things like health restored per second from 9 to 15 when you get this upgrade, so that's quite nice. Energy cost reduced from actually, we'll do this one at a time. This, I don't know, I kind of feel like this, along with the speed boost in the same patch, is possibly asking for trouble. Like, I'm not sure. Like, of course, the Caduceus reactor costs Jesus, no one ever gets it, so I actually have no idea. I think it's 150, 150? I'm not totally sure. Someone in the chat post how much it is, because I have no idea. So I kind of feel like this one and the speed boost in the same patch may be pushing things a little bit too much. Generally, when patches are done, I kind of like it when they do it one at a time, instead of saying, let's throw everything at the wall and then remove them as we go along. I kind of feel like a slow buff up is better than buffing everything and then you have to nerf down. People never like when you see in patch changes, you know, blah 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 removed or blah 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 down from, which is always a common thing in World of Warcraft patches. But yeah, I don't know. Obviously, we'll see. This is very much still a learning experience, given that the game is still a few months away. Energy cost reduced from 3 health per 1 energy to 5 health per 1 energy. So, yeah, honestly, I would say I'm not in the best position to kind of talk about medevacs realistically, apart from casting games and that sort of thing. It's really nice. Like, it's a nice objective sort of opinion to have as a caster, because, you know, I'm simply watching players do their thing. Because I only play Mech as Terran, and I am going to try and fix that. I'm going to try and play some of the other strategies, and I am getting a Zerg account, by the way, so I'm going to play a bit of Zerg. I feel like all of this together is a bit of a weird one. Oh, and there you go. The cost, sorry, the cost increased. See, I told you I hadn't read it. I need to finish my coffee. The cost increased from 180 seconds for Caduceus Reactor up to 150, and 110 seconds. So just under 2 minutes. Of course, that is in Blizzard game time. The Lords of Time, where they can apparently dictate their own kind of timings. So it's I think if this wasn't here, if the health restored per second wasn't changed, but the energy cost was there, all of this together would be would be fine. Like, I mean, because, you know, it'd obviously be just this and then just this stuff, the speed boost up the top. That would be okay, but I think with adding this in, that might be changed. I don't know. We'll see. Next unit, the Reaper. And of course, if you don't have Heart of the Swarm and you play Terran, things have changed around a little bit in regards to openings. Generally, TVT in particular has somehow come along to this area where Reapers are like dominating openings, like because of the change to their high ground vision thingy. God, I've got to remember what these are called. Because of the changes to the high ground vision for the Reapers, what is it? Battle awareness. Is that what it is? I think that's what it is. It's kind of made it like people will always grab a Reaper or two, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, and it really changes the way that quite a lot of people play. So these changes will be really interesting. The base speed increased for a Reaper from 2.95 up to 3.375. If I'm sort of thinking of this correctly, it's a very minor increase, but it is an increase, so that'll obviously, you know, that could change things. Of course, the upgraded speed increased from 3.84 to 4.25. Now, this will be really interesting to see if this brings back some of the heavy Reaper openings, especially versus Zerg. And I mean, if you get players like Marine King Prime who have ridiculous micro on multiple battlefronts, you could see some of those high APM players, high multitasking players, going for multiple Reaper openings, even against Protoss, to see if he can jump in and get some damage done on one mineral line, while the Protoss is doing, you know, trying to defend the natural or something like that with the mothership core. So, yeah, I don't know how I feel about this one just at the moment, but it should be cool. Widowmine no longer hits cloaked units. This is, I feel like this one goes multiple ways. It's kind of like, well, that really helps Protoss in TVP because scouting basically from the end of early game to effectively for the rest of the game, gets a little bit difficult in PvT, just purely because most players, if they try out Mech, they'll obviously have quite a lot of Widow Mines around, which used to hit observers and would one-shot them, and I kind of felt like that was a little bit, you know, I was kind of like, alright, well now suddenly we're Zerg versus Terran in, you know, very early Wings of Liberty when Zerg just couldn't scout anything. So I think that's nice. However, it does, of course, affect the fact that you won't be able to kill observers anymore. So very heavy Widow Mine openings that a lot of Terrans do in TVP will be affected, because effectively once you've got the observer out, you won't need to use the energy from a mothership core on Envision, which is one way that players like to try and counter Widow Mines, was you have a mothership core around to try and stop drops coming in, because a lot of Terrans like to open up with Widow Mine slash Hellion drops. It's a weird combination, but it works quite nicely. And a way to deal with that was, of course, to have the mothership core around. Now, the mothership core does die really quickly to Widow Mines, so it was kind of a situation where you're like, alright, I have to have beautiful micro to make sure that I use Envision, I get a Stalker in range of the Widow Mine, but not in range of its actual missile thing, and also the mothership core has to stay out of range as well. So it was this weird kind of balance thing, and I know a lot of players will look at that and say, well, that just means that you have to micro better, and it's true. It's true. You have to get used to dealing with that kind of harassment. I mean, you know, but the not hitting observers is a pretty big thing. It also means that it does not hit Banshees if you get cloaked Banshee attacks, which I have seen. That'll be an interesting one as well, because having the Widow Mines out was almost like this big hard counter to dealing with cloaked Banshees. But I don't know, I didn't actually get to play too much TVT during HOTS, but we'll be doing more of that soon. What else? That means that... oh, and DTs, I suppose. And does it affect burrowed units? I have no idea. If anyone was playing HOTS and you were playing Terran, I actually have no idea, because I haven't actually seen a large amount of TVZ replays in HOTS. But yeah, so not hitting DTs is also quite a nice thing, but they're still turrets. So either way, and we'll get to DTs a little bit later. New upgrade, Drilling Claws, decreases burrow time from 3 to 1 second. Requires a tech lab and armory, costs 150, 110 research time. So this will be really cool, because it means that, especially for meching Terran, hi Nate, UK, especially for a meching Terran, a lot of the time when you're turtling up and when you're moving your large defensive immobile units, or sorry, not defensive, you're moving your large line of very slow immobile units, lifting up the Widow Mines and then reburrowing them into a position is something that really does affect Mech quite a lot, because it means that you have to wait 3 seconds for them to burrow. It is, while 3 seconds in a realistic context in real life, if you count to 3, 1, 2, 3, it's not actually that much time, but it does affect when you've suddenly got a lot of zealots coming down, you've got immortals coming down, you've got, you know, even like void rays and stuff in the sky for Protoss is going for that kind of counter to Mech, and it does affect it. If you're like, oh shit, I gotta burrow these guys to make sure I can get the missiles out to soak up some of the zealots or take down some of the immortals, blah blah blah. So I think that's a really, really cool change, particularly for Mech. It also will make drops interesting in mid to late game. Like a lot of the time in PvZ, you'll see players drop down DTs to do harassment in expansion bases around the map against the Zerg. It means that you'll be able to drop down Widow Mines, burrow them straight away, and then you can just decimate mineral lines that are around the map. Of course, that is for all the matchups, TVZ, TP, and blah blah blah. But that'll be really interesting for that, to see how that goes. I think a lot of players will start using things like that. What's next? So I do like those changes. as a Protoss player, it's really nice to know that my observers are not going to be killed every single time I scout by a randomly placed Widow Mine. And it also means that Terrans will have perhaps a little bit of fun with Mech now. Thor. There were some changes to Thor. I'm not sure. Like a lot of players seem to not like the Thor at all, and generally I think it was a little bit of a boring unit. You can use it, of course, anti-muta, to some extent anti-Protoss air in a way, and of course they are really heavy and do quite a lot of damage, but obviously no one really using 250mm strike cannons, so that's been removed, and I don't think we've really seen people use that since the days, the very early days of using them to deal with Ultralisks, before the Ultralisks were removed off the list that get stunned by that. Some people, although still very, very rarely, will get it to deal with Mech in TVP. Of course, because what you do, throw a strike cannon down on an Immortal, the Immortal does no damage, and I'm pretty sure strike cannon actually kills an Immortal in one shot. Correct me if I'm wrong, someone in the chat. So that's I feel like that's a good change. The Thor can now switch between two modes: high impact payload and explosive payload. The mode shift takes 4 seconds. When in high impact payload mode, the Thor switches to a different anti-airgun 250mm Punisher cannons that has 10 range and deals 24 flat damage. So, hang on, when Thor switches to... So this is an anti-air... Not sure. So what's that for? That's for dealing with Zerglate? That's for dealing with Broodlords and that kind of thing? 10 range is pretty big. Like, you consider that at Siege Tank in Siege mode has a 13 range. 10 range is pretty big. So 24 flat damage. I wonder if that's per shot or if that's per missile that gets fired or something like that. Either way, looks like that might be interesting for dealing with some particular units, perhaps also Protoss air. Of course, Tempests are a big issue from time to time when playing as a Terran. So that will be interesting. As I said, I don't know about this one yet. I think I'd have to see that in action to be actually able to properly judge what's going on with that. Thor radius, inner radius, and separation radius increased from 0.8215 to 1. I'm pretty sure that just means the area that a Thor can stand in with units standing around it is slightly increased, so you won't have 600 Marines like standing inside the model of a Thor, basically. I think that's what that means. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Seeker Missile redesigned. Of course, this has been a little bit of a change in Wings of Liberty as well. Can now fire from 10 range. As we said just before, keep in mind that a Siege Tank has 13 range, so it's actually just a little bit closer than that, so that's not bad. That's a lot better, actually. Of course, a lot of players don't like the way that that the Siege Tank works. Sorry, not the Siege Tank. The Seeker Missile works because you have to get the Raven inside fungal range. You get it in your parasite range. You get it in the range of feedback and all these kind of things, which is why generally people don't like the way that well, they don't like the way the Hunter Seeker Missile works, and in turn, sometimes the Raven cops all the flack for that in general. So, so that really helps out that. However, of course, missile comes out and stays immobile in front of the Raven for 3 seconds while charging up, then rapidly moves, it's not dodgeable at this point, and explodes at the target for 300 single target damage. So, it's now a little bit like, if you play Dota 2, it's like Gyrocopter's homing missile, although without the distance change thing. So, and also now it's just an exploding single target damage instead of an AoE, but the damage is increased. Now it's 300 instead of, what was it before, 250 with some splash, so it's a little bit different in that regard. Of course, you will have time to react, perhaps. You may be able to react. However, targeted unit lights up red when targeted. So we're going to have more disco units along with the mothership core. If the unit moves 13 range outside of where the sequel missile is, the missile fizzles. Missile fizzle manizzle, whatever. So basically, so hang on, that kind of means that the missile is always going to hit, or depending on how fast this rapidly moves thing is. And like it does say, it's not dodgeable at this point. Like, I don't understand that. If it moves 13 range out of where the seeker missile is, the missile fizzles. I don't know. Either way, I think this will be pretty cool. Interesting to see how that goes. It's worth keeping in mind they haven't actually mentioned that this has gone as a parity change with Wings of Liberty, so that the seeker missile doesn't need to be researched. So I guess that's going to stay as a researchable option at the tech lab, now that it does do a little bit more damage. Theoretically, from what they're saying here, it's not going to miss realistically. So I don't know. I guess we'll see how that one goes. The Hellbat, of course, the actual tanky mode version of a Hellion. Splash damage radius increase from 90 to 110. Then not yet, napkin box. We're going to get there in a second. So that's just a little change. I think that might help, but not really too much. That'll obviously, that feels like an all facets kind of change for the Hellbat. I mean, I still think this is a bit of a dodgy unit. Like, I'm not sure what the point of it is, apart from just saying, look at me, I'm at the front line while everything else does damage, but I'm going to die. So I think that might be just trying to help that a little bit. You know, doing more damage to zealots if you're going for a mech style, doing more damage to lings and roaches and that kind of thing, perhaps. So I don't know about that one. If you have, of course, if you have your own comments, please feel free to post in the chat, or if you're on YouTube watching this, feel free to post in the comments there. Armory. The Armory now only has one weapon and one armor upgrade for both air and ground upgrades for both factory and starport units. If you're a Terran, you should post in the chat or in the comments and say how excited you are for that, because that means that, of course, when you upgrade your weapons, that means that upgrades them for the tanks, the Hellions and Hellbats and Widowmines and battle cruisers and Vikings and all of these cool things. So this is going to be a really interesting change. This is something that does buff Mech quite a bit, because, of course, generally speaking, Ricky Rod, very good. I think the Seeker missile thing is that if the targeted unit can move outside of its 10 range while the missile is in its arming phase, then it will fizzle. Fair enough. I wonder if that's, yeah, that could be what it means. Thank you for posting that. Evilotto thinks it's lame. So, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, Armory. So, in Mech, there are only... The way I play Mech TVP in particular right now, of course this does affect TVT and TVZ, but we're just going to use the example of TVP because it's the more interesting one. There are only a couple of kind of openings you can do, generally because the Banshee is not a hugely viable opening for Mech, because it costs quite a lot, because like most of the time you will want to get Cloak, and if you don't have Cloak, a Stalker is going to smash you apart unless you have ridiculous micro, and you can micro at 2 fronts. So that is going to be changed a little bit, because what you could do, possibly, depending on how early or how late you wanted to do it, and whether you expanded quickly, you may be able to fit in +1 weapons for the Banshee, which also then translates to your tanks and your Hellions as well. So that, I don't know, like, I'm just throwing that out there. That was just off the top of my head, but that could be interesting. But of course, generally in Mech, what you want to do is you want to go for things that you go for the cheap units. Obviously, first up, you go for your Hellions. Then you get to your Banshees and your tanks. Then you can throw in Thors. Then the later composition for it, obviously for TVZ, it's a little bit dynamic based on what composition your opponent's using. Are they using more ground? Are they using more air? Then obviously you'll need to balance that out with Thors, Vikings, and tanks, those kinds of things. In TVP, of course, you want to go from having Thors and tanks into battle cruisers and ghosts. And of course Widowmines as well. Like, I've got to stop thinking of this in a Wings of Liberty context. So this change, it saves so much money. When you play Terran Mech, you know that things cost quite a lot of gas. Your Thors cost 200, your siege tanks cost 100. Oh my god, I can't believe I've forgotten what that is. Whatever it is. And then of course your upgrades cost exponentially a shitload. And someone just messaged me. Hang on, who is it? Oh, it's just an email. So the upgrades cost quite a lot. And then your air upgrades cost quite a lot as well, on top of all of that. And it sort of degrades from the timings that you can use in Mech. So this change is going to be really cool. I think this change is going to be really, really interesting. It's going to throw a complete spanner in the works for playing Mech. You're going to say, whoa, you know, my Widowmine can now not hit cloaked units. I'll have to be a little bit more careful with dealing with observers and that kind of thing. Whoa, my Widowmine can now burrow in 1 second because I've got the drilling claws upgrade. And then, whoa, I upgraded my tanks earlier on. Now my battle cruisers are doing a shitload more damage as well. So that's going to be really cool. Overall, lots of changes to Terran, of course. We've got the bio-based play changes here with the Medevac and of course the Reaper as well. Then we sort of lean in towards perhaps something that's a little bit more mid to late game, plus also Mech orientated with the Widowmine. The Thor, I don't know. You guys would have to sort of post to say what you think about the Thor change, because I don't know in particular. Like, especially this high impact payload thing. We'll have to see how that goes. Raven changes, buffing up the Seeker Missile quite nice. Of course, it means that later on in the game, the Seeker Missile will actually be used and more useful at the same time. Hellion, meh, I don't know. Armory, this will be great for Mech, of course. So, let's jump into Protoss, where the squealing will begin. Mothership. Recall now functions as it does with the Mothership core. So, that means that the recall is no longer as it was in Brood War with Arbiters. So, you will be able to recall an area of units to the Mothership. Now it's going to function as it is with the Mothership core. Now, the way the Mothership core works is it's a lot like having a hero in Warcraft 3 with your stupid teleport scroll, town portal scroll, whatever it is, I don't know, where the hero sits in a position and then all the units around them teleport back to your nexus. And that's effectively what the Mothership core is. It's a hero at this stage right now, because that's how you have to use it. Now we've got... I don't understand this at all. Vortex now kills a single unit. I don't know. And then, of course, Vortex does not affect massive units at the same time, so we'll keep these bunched up. So, that means that... So a lot of people don't like the fact that PvZ, in particular, is effectively a one-hit wonder. Will my Vortex hit? Will it grab all the Broodlords? Will it grab all the Infestors? Whatever. And then will I get my Archons in on time? Will the infested Terrans be able to push out the Archons and the units so that they don't actually get the full smash when a toilet flushes? And, you know, I tend to agree. I think that a one-stop shop solution to PvZ endgame is a bad way to play the game. Especially when you've got things like Neural Parasite that can flip it around and say, you know what, you've got no Vortex now because I just Vortexed all your shit. And yeah, I don't know. Like, as Napkin Box is just saying, click unit, unit dies. Like, I don't know. How do you do an animation for that? They just get sucked into a vortex or something? I don't know. That's really weird. So, I don't know. I feel like they've changed Vortex in a good way, that it doesn't affect massive units, so it's no longer a situation of, well, all the Broodlords got Vortex, now we're dead, or all the Ultras got Vortex, which doesn't actually happen too often, now we're dead. In fact, I don't think I've seen an Archon toilet on Ultras. If you have, post in the chat, because I'd like to see it. I don't think I've seen it.